Hi everybody, how are you? We're moving on to Unit 6 right now, which is going to start to deal with things related to exponents, square roots, things that aren't really lines anymore. So we're expanding on things. We just got done inequalities, and now we're back to equal signs. But the equal signs are going to deal with advanced math. And the two things we're going to learn about today to start our unit off involve exponents and square roots. In our exponents, you should have done, I think, at some point in middle school, what it does is give the number a lot of power. So that this little 2 right here means 8 to the second power. So that 2 of the 8s are being multiplied together to get 64. Please remember, everybody, I know the mistake everybody makes is they see an 8, they see a 2. 8 times 2 is 16. Please remember, 8 squared is 64. We can do it with negative numbers. Negative 3 squared, that means negative 3 times negative 3, the number times itself, and we get 9, positive 9, okay? Please remember, on your calculator, if you punch in negative 3 squared and that's it, you'll probably get negative 9 because you're giving the order of operations a little bit differently. You're squaring the 3 and then multiplying the negative, okay? So it's important that you understand that part about exponents. Then we move on to square roots, which is the opposite of an exponent. When we talk about the square root of 64, we're talking about two numbers, and it's only 2 because it's a square root. What number times itself gives us 64? And there's actually two answers to this. There are two answers, positive 8 and negative 8. So I put this little plus minus in front of the 8. You don't necessarily have to do that right now. My main goal is to get you to understand those concepts, that it's 8 times itself gives you 64. Here with 100, it's 10. 10 squared, 10 times itself is 100. And we put a plus or a minus because it could be negative 10 too. But we tend to be dealing with positive numbers right now. Okay? So hopefully you have these on your notes. If you need to pause the video right now, take down some of these notes, because now I'm going to be moving on to some other things. The next section talks about estimating roots, and I want you to be able to write this down. Estimating roots. The square root of 9 is 3. The square root of 16 is 4. So here's 3, here's 4. Everything in between 3 and 4 will be a decimal, 3.2, 3.5, right? So what we can do is estimate that the square root of 10 is between 3 and 4, right? So the square root of 10, if you do it on your calculator, is 3.1. Actually 3.16 if we go to the hundredths. The square root of 12 is 3.5. So anything between the square root of 9 and the square root of 16 will be between 3 and 4. So we can kind of count off that way too. So that's your estimating roots. Then we get into using the calculator. And that should be pretty easy. You should be pretty good with the calculator to get decimal answers. So if we take the number, the square root of 12, with your calculator, go in, find where the root button is. It depends on the calculator. Just punch the root button in, and then it will give you a space to put the number in. Put in 12, and you'll get 3.5, blah, 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 blah. Okay? And we tend to round to the nearest tenth right now for that. So that's going to be using the calculator to find the square roots, because we're going to be doing that with your work when you begin it. Okay, now you're teaching problems. Solving equations. So I have 4 teaching problems. I've given you the problem. I want you to write down the work as I go through it with you, okay? So, teaching problem 1 is 5x squared equals 125. Solve for x. Find the value of x. Round to the nearest tenth if you need a rounding. So here's the equation. If this wasn't here, all you do is divide by 5. You're still going to do that, okay? Divide by 5, divide by 5. The goal is going to be get the x squared by itself. So x squared equals, and then do this math with your calculator, 25. Here's the important point. We want x by itself. It's x squared. How do we get x by itself? Well, we root both sides. That's what we're going to call it. We're going to root both sides. The square root of x squared. What times what gives us x squared? Well, x does. So there's x squared. The root of x squared is x. And then with your calculator, or you probably know it, the square root of 25 is 5. So our answer to that is 5. There's teaching problem 1. Okay. 2. 9x squared equals 72. Same deal. Divide by 9. Divide by 9. X squared equals 8. Root both sides. X equals the square root of 8. If you do that with your calculator, you will then get about 2.9, because it's a little less than the square root of 9, which is 3, right? So you could estimate it, but you could also use your calculator too. So those are 2 basic ones right there. Now let's go on to teaching problem 3, which is still the same type of 2-step problem that we did earlier this year. So teaching problem 3, 3x squared plus 8 equals 30. Take away 8, take away 8. 3x squared is 22. Divide by 3, divide by 3. X squared is equal to 22 thirds. Sorry, this should be a 3. All right, so that looks complicated because it's a fraction. Don't worry about it. Do 22 divided by 3, and you will get 7.3. Just do the division with the calculator. You'll get that. Then root both sides. X equals 2.7. All right, so that's a little bit longer because it's got the extra steps, plus you had to divide. I wanted to show you one where you had to get into decimals a little bit. Okay, so make sure you've got this piece down. Oh, that one didn't. All right, you might need to pause the camera, pause the video, and to make sure you've got the work down on that. Because you now need to go back and to work on ones like this. Here are your notes that will help you out for that. One more to go, and we're done. X squared over 8 plus 2 equals 10. Okay? Minus 2, minus 2. X squared over 8 equals 8. Times both sides by 8. X squared equals 64. X equals the square root of 64. Okay? And that's going to equal 8. make sure